having to wish for death isn't a good thing, and so I think that maybe the church should do something to make missions more enjoyable. Which, especially in this case, because that mission had. It wasn't the most strict mission. I have heard of worse. But the rules I thought were kind of ridiculous. Especially media rules, because it was like only church stuff. That's all you can do. Literally, I mean, it was a thing, but not really a thing in my other mission. But your companion has to see your fucking. There's going to be a lot of beliefs in this, but they have to see your phone at all times to make sure you're doing missionary things. And this companion would always get angry if my thoughts on scripture weren't deep enough, or if I didn't understand things enough, or if I didn't open my mouth to people, or other things. And I'm just like, sorry, I'm an introvert, and I'm not a jerk that's going to force things on people that don't want it. Because my missionary approach is, if they approach me, good. If my companion, who happens to be stupid and rude enough to force people to take a lesson, which I kind of feel bad about, if they're able to do that, then I'll help teach. I'll do the teaching. I'm just not going to do the finding. I try to help find, of course, because that's what you do as a missionary, but don't expect me to just randomly stop a stranger and be like, hey, do you want to sit down with us and talk about Jesus? Because let's be honest, who in the world wants to talk about Jesus? Not a lot of people. And so I try to take a more approach of, if they're curious, I'll do what I can to inform them what we are. And he didn't like this. He also didn't like doing anything with church members, which is also kind of dumb. Because you would think that if anyone's going to be interested in anyone, it's going to be the church members, not really the missionaries, because the members are there 24/7, not the missionaries. The missionaries, I mean, there's missionaries all the time, but the missionaries come and go. We weren't permanent, which is another thing. We moved from time to time, which, again, something out of our control. I could stay there months, or I could stay there about a month. Like, yeah. But whatever the case is, I'm glad I didn't have to stay with that pair long. I only stayed with them. The quarantine was part of that sort of. So how the mission works is they group it by time length, called transfers. It's like each time between a transfer, which is when missionaries kind of get shifted or jumbled around. And this timeline was 6 weeks. Every 6 weeks, missionaries got moved around. Sometimes there's a difference because of a holiday or something, and they want to honor the holiday, like Christmas or something. But generally, every 6 months, missionaries got jumbled around and moved around. In my case, I only stayed with them for 4 weeks out of the 6 weeks because of the quarantine, which was part of that 6 weeks, which was lucky for me. I kind of technically so how it worked is there's 2 areas that were jumbled into one area, and then the mission president, because of how many missionaries were finally getting to Korea, decided let's split it to being 2 separate areas, which meant I gotta go to the other area, which is where I got my first and best Korean companion, my best companion in general. But yeah, shout out to him if he watches this video at some point in the future. Best companion ever, very chill. Not to expose our secrets, but yeah, we were kind of an unruly pair. We didn't really follow the rules to a T, which is why he's the happiest moment of my mission. And luckily for me, he was also my longest companion. I had him for like 3 transfers and a partial, I think, is what it became. I think. Yeah. I think that, no? Maybe it was 2 and a partial. 3 and a partial? I forget. I have it written in some notes somewhere, but it doesn't really matter. Whatever the case is, he's my longest companion. I love that guy. He was so nice and kind and loving and understanding and smart and brilliant and just human. He was human. That's the thing that I didn't like, is most of the missionaries that were in Korea, which were mostly the Americans, by the way, that did this, they were robots. They didn't care about people. They just cared about the number of people they're teaching and how many people are joining the church. That's all they cared about. They didn't care about human emotion or anything like that, or the fact that people have lives or they're not interested in things. They didn't care about that. They just cared about following the rules, finding people, teaching people, baptizing people, and just forcing religion down people's throats. And I thought it was inhumane. It's like, don't force things on people. That's not how things work. I mean, sometimes that's how it works, but it's not a natural way, because then people just do it out of fear or obligation rather than self-conviction, which is what I think. Religion should be a self thing. What you choose to believe is what you choose to believe. It shouldn't be just an effect of, oh, I want to make so and so feel happy, and so I'm gonna just cater to them. No, that's not what religion should be. It shouldn't be catering to people. It should be what you want. So, yeah, whatever the case is, besides him, I had two other companions that I really enjoyed, which were my last companions. I was in another trio at the end. But for the most part, it was just trying to follow the rules to a T. I wasn't perfect. I hit things, but I tried to follow things to a T. But the whole time, I was pretty depressed. I think one thing that also depressed me, though, is my Korea mission got kind of split in half. Half my time, I wasn't even in Busan. I was in sort of a small podunk farming, podunk, by the way, in quotations, town called Kimcheon. I love Kimcheon with all my heart. It was a nice place. All the members there were super kind and nice and understanding, and you're in a small place by yourself. And that was one thing that was also kind of sad, is what made it feel less like a family, is everyone's so far away from each other. There's not a lot of connectivity, especially because Korea was very locked down on the Korea. Korea was locked down on Korea. What it meant is they're locked down on COVID. They were very careful with the virus, so there's a lot of wearing masks, trying not to meet each other in groups, stuff like that. A lot of online stuff, so there wasn't as much bonding with other people that were in the mission, unlike my other mission, or the other half of my mission, I should say. But yeah, that's that. Also there's some companions I just didn't get along with, like, ever so slightly, but they're more enjoyable. Like, by far, first two among the worst. And then my next worst was before I was in that other trio. I had a other bad egg that wanted to make my life. He was like the other two, but he was a scared pansy. He didn't want to do anything. And if you watch this video, who this pertains to, I'm just saying things how they are. He tried to make me be the one doing all the work, because he didn't want to do it himself, because he was too anxious and scared to do it himself. Also, he's about to leave, and so he started getting very extra gung-ho about doing stuff, but he was too scared to actually do it. And not being very understanding, he's like, well, I'm introverted and scared, so I'm going to force the other person to be the one to do everything, which I was unmotivated because I didn't care at that point, because my mission fucking... I'm going to have to bleep a lot in this video. I don't know how to bleep, but I'm going to have to look it up. But I didn't care at that point. I was enraged. I was not happy. The mission sucks. Actually, didn't think about the companion thing too much. He wasn't the one before my last companionship. He was the one before that. Because I had like a little space with another companion. Anyways, back to point. But yeah, like, I don't know what all to say. But yeah, my last there, by the way, was in Busan. Nowhere important in Busan. I was in sort of what is I guess you can call it the, like, backwater part of Busan. Like, it's just like the unimportant part that no one visits. where no one goes to, and that's kind of run down. My last part of Busan was better, but especially that like, cause like I only really had like 4 different places I ever was. I was in the first 2 areas, which were farming areas, and then I was in Busan, and both of those areas were kind of rinky-dink parts of Busan that aren't important. Not that that matters, but it just kind of felt annoying that I was out in the middle of nowhere, and that I was in the again, sort of. It wasn't quite nowhere, but it was just like an unimportant part that doesn't have much going for it, more or less. But yeah. Uh, whatever the case is, missions are hard. I'll just cap everything. Missions are hard. You have a lot of stupid rules you have to follow. You have the chances of having a stupid companion that wants to make your life hell. You're sad, you're depressed. In my case, you're suicidal. You may not do stuff to yourself, but you hope stuff happens to you. There's also that natural fear that comes with, I think, any sort of spiritual thing. Is we're in a day and age where religion isn't very. To religious people, I'm not saying that religion isn't important, but what I am saying is it's not important to the masses. Most people don't find value in religion because science has sort of overcome religion. And I agree, science is very important. I am a full believer in all sciences. However, at least personally, I don't think that science alone is sufficient, at least not for me. I need that religious view because there's just things in science that aren't explainable, that can be explainable with a religious perspective. So, anyways, whatever the case is, I get home from my mission. I'm depressed and sad that, I went through 2 years of basically hell. Being told what I can do, where I can stay. Basically, every little thing in my life imaginable was like, I was told what to do. And I was like, that was a lot of control. And it sucked. It really, really sucked. Being told literally every little thing of your life, and also feeling like during that whole time, if I do anything wrong, I am a failure. And I'll admit, I went in and eventually did stuff that I wasn't allowed to. I listened to music I wasn't supposed to. I watched movies I was not supposed to. I watched like stuff I wasn't supposed to. I even at some point, like the part of missions now is they have an app on your phone that basically limits what apps you can have. I literally took that app off my phone, so that way I could get stuff I wanted. Because so at the end, very very end of my mission, I started playing games. I started just watching stuff and reading stuff. My last companion's super chill, and they're now not missionaries anymore, so I don't really care to the missionaries that will get angry and be like, wait, missionaries actually did that? Yeah, the 3 of us, we did that. We would watch stuff. We did things. We visited the beach during times we weren't supposed to visit the beach because it was too popular. And that whole view, I believe, is just because, oh Lord, there's guys in boxer trunks and there's girls in bikinis. That's just a normal part of life. I doubt there's any missionary out there who hasn't seen a bikini or hasn't seen a guy in boxer trunks. So if they're really that wanting of that sort of thing, or really feeling of that sort of thing, if you catch my gist, I don't know how much you can say on YouTube. Sorry for the other split. I feel like this is going to be a very long video. But yeah. As I was trying to get into is now the more church related thing. Yeah, there's a lot of rules in the church. I'm not going to go into everything, of course, because that would make this video extra long. But I started thinking about things because I realized I'm not happy. I mean, a lot of it's probably because of my mission, but also just because of what it takes to be a member. As I realized, I'm not happy. what is up with this religion? And so I naturally started to, dive into stuff. I had an understanding of everything, pretty much. Which, by the way, during a mission, I read the Bible, which was a big feat that I was proud of. I read the whole Bible, Old Testament, New Testament, from the beginning of page 1 all the way to the last page of 1,590. I read it all. I'm not saying I understood it all. There's a lot of hard to understand concepts in there, but I read it all. Not that this has to do with what I'm about to talk about right now, but yeah, the church is a very rough church. It's not easy, definitely, to be a Mormon. There's a lot of rules you have to follow, and there's a lot of facts that I think get skipped over on purpose. I think the church tries to hide a lot of things because if they let you know the full truth, you'll begin to dislike it. And so they try to give you the ideologies and the theologies and everything of the church bit by bit, and it's very biased the way they do it, and it's very positive the way they do it. They don't let you see the negative things. If you want to say the negative things, you have to actually delve into it and look into it and research it yourself, or get told it by someone that's already left, or it just isn't a member at all. And so it's unhonest is what it comes down to. Is they're going to paint the picture as rainbows and kittens and unicorns when it's like a rose bush. There's some beautiful things about roses, but if you're actually going to grab a rose bush, there are thorns all over those roses, and they will puncture you and hurt you. Which I failed going through the rose bush. I guess I wasn't a good enough gardener, maybe to some. But, yeah. It's a thorny time being in the church. There's a lot of pain. And a lot of times the response of Mormons is forget your pain, just think of Jesus. Your pain doesn't exist. Just think of Jesus, he'll fix your pain. And that was, I'm sorry, I'm weak maybe, but that's not enough for me. And also there's, other reasonings that have kept me going the way I'm going, but I just started to delve into stuff and think about stuff, and for example, I thought about heaven. And basically, Mormon theology, there are 3 heavens. The higher up you go is basically the more you follow Jesus. And I realized to myself, if I'm to get there 100%, it's very unlikely with who I am now. Because there are certain rules you have to follow in the church. As I had pre-mentioned, the words of the prophets are basically words from God themselves in Mormon theology. And so basically, if you're not following the teachings of the prophets and apostles, you're not following Mormonism to a T. And thus, you're not worthy of certain blessings. For example, everyone likes to mention, for example, the word of wisdom. I'm kind of shouting out, hey, I have this problem, but I could give less craps what people think, because I don't really consider myself Mormon anymore. But in this, I'll teach it the way I taught it as a missionary. We follow the rule of chat, which is C stands for coffee, H stands for harmful drugs, A stands for alcohol, and then there's 2 T's, one for tea, like green tea, black tea, one for coffee, or tobacco, which cigarettes. And I didn't really follow this rule to a T. Kind of funny pun, because I have always been a pretty big drinker of green tea. Green tea has a lot of health benefits, and I love the taste of green tea. And also culturally, because I'm into Asian culture, I you know, became a green tea drinker, and I thought, you know, it's a very good drink, but even green tea is a no-no. And this rule has some gray lining, which is weird. It's like black tea and green tea largely is considered a no-no, but you can drink herbal tea, so like teas that come from like random flowers and plants is okay as long as it's not a tea plant. Which tea is just tea. I don't see why there's a difference, but to them it's all about the plant, which is weird. Also, to many, my my love of energy drinks is a no-no. There are Mormons that would like to fall extra to tea and say things like soda pops and especially energy drinks are no. You don't drink those because they are bad. And I understand that they're bad for you, let's be honest. No one's going to say that soda's good for you. But if you're going to say soda's bad for you, but also claim that tea's bad for you when tea has health benefits, it doesn't make a lot of sense. You know, there's a lot of rules, and I kept a pretty good chunk of them. There's the law of chastity, which I kept. I'm not going to tell the full details, but I'll let you take hints. But basically, this rule says no baby making processes or lovey-dovey, extra lovey-dovey things until you're married. And I, never really had a girlfriend to do that stuff with, but I'm not gonna claim I'm perfect because the other part of that is in the Mormon Church. There's this idea of thought crimes. So if you think things, then you're automatically bad and of influence from Satan, and you need to fix yourself. And so, if I so much think of a girl, for example, then yeah, that's no bueno. I can't think of a girl in a way. I mean, you could think of them in a way of I like them before marriage, but you can't think of them in a way like I would like to do stuff with them. If you catch my gist. I'm trying not to get demonetized by YouTube. Not that I get money from YouTube and the current because I don't have really any subscribers or anything. But yeah, that's a thing. But yeah. There's other rules, and one of the rules that I had problems with is there's a lot of people that will claim, well, that's in a certain book that pertains to certain people, but let's be honest, the church has certain things they expect of you. And so, there are words in a booklet called The Strength for Youth, I believe is what it's called. And this booklet, which is mainly for like teenagers and stuff, has a section that describes grooming. And in this grooming section, it says basically you should look clean, you should wear appropriate clothing. Appropriate meaning the longer the better, but also no bad stuff, I guess, on your shirts and stuff like that. You should catch the drift if you catch the drift. And as well, just don't dress skimpy. You should be fully clothed, according to their rules, which I didn't really have much problems with that. But then it even goes as far as you can't have tattoos. You can't have piercings unless you're a woman, but only a pair of earrings. Like, only enough for a pair of earrings. That's it. Gauges of earrings that are on different parts of the ear, like maybe like some sort of bar or something. That's no bueno. You can't do that. And even down to hair, because like girls, I think, get a little better with hair because less is expected of them hair-wise. But guys, being a guy in the church, oh my gosh, you're expected to have the shorter the better. You basically, if you're bald, you're Gucci. And I mean, as you can tell, I'm growing out my hair. Having long hair, or to any Mormon that happens to watch the video, you having long hair, that's technically a sin under Mormon religion because you're not following the prophet's words. Because they want you to have clean, pristine looks. That means short hair. And even having a beard is like frowned upon. Like you can't, for example, the Mormon Church has two major universities and two other sort of minor ones. They're most of them are part of the BYU family, and so there's BYU, the main one, which is in Provo. There's BYU-I, which is the Idaho version, that's smaller. There's BYU Hawaii, which is like the small one that a lot of people like to go to because it's in a tropical place, but is also, because it's in Hawaii, very expensive. And then they also have some other schools, like they have a business school and some religious schools, and even like there's like a new LDS school. I forgot what it's called in like Virginia or something, which is I think kind of random that there's a random pocket of Mormons in Virginia, but whatever. I don't complain. Do what you do. But whatever the case is, though, one of the rules for these schools is you can't have a beard. Beards are not allowed. Even like not shaving for a couple days is frowned upon, which is another thing with the mission. I had to shave my beard. I had to shave my facial hair every day. And I know that there's women that prefer a shaved look, but sometimes I think that women and other people need to get realistic. Especially when you're someone like me that has my genes, you're at the unlucky end of the pool. Because I grow facial hair really, really fast. Because, there's some people that it takes them months to get anything going. But if you watch my hair video, when I started growing my beard, that process went by fast. Like, look at what my beard's at now. Like, my facial hair can grow. And so I had to shave every day, which I found really annoying. And the same would be if I would hypothetically be going to BYUI. Or just even technically under just Mormon religion, you're supposed to technically be shaving your beard. It's not to say that there isn't members with beards, because there's members with beards, but technically you should be shaving your beard. And by having a beard, you're technically sinning if you cut to the chase. Because the words of the prophets and apostles are the laws of God. They're considered the laws of God. Just like the words of the Bible or the words of the Book of Mormon, which is kind of funny. And this kind of leads into a future topic where I talk about Christianity as a whole. But yeah, it's just kind of funny because there's a lot of, like, if you look at the Bible, if you look at the Book of Mormon, there's a lot of contradictions that happen. Especially with the Bible, there's a lot of, not so much if you focus on one segment, but if you look at like Old Testament versus New Testament, it's like, why did God all of a sudden change so much? One moment he was an angry old man, and then the next moment he's like a kind old man, and it's like, huh? But yeah, there's a lot of different things. If you look at it theologically, it just doesn't make sense. Going with the heaven thing, like, yeah, so basically to get to the highest place in heaven, you have to be the perfect little Mormon boy or girl and do everything as perfect as possible. But yeah, there's a lot of theology things that just don't mesh well with me. Where it's just like, God seems very petty. Why does he care about these small little things that don't matter? I could get big things, like, adultery, or, stuff like that, I can understand. Or I can understand not stealing things, or trying not to lie, and trying to just be a good person. Like, I understand being a good person. But overall, it's just like, even though they say they believe in faith, faith meaning believing, specifically in Jesus and what he can do, it ultimately becomes a works-based society. Even though they want to say we're not a works-based society, they basically are. In order to get high in heaven, you have to do your works. You have to be a good person. You have to do good things. You have to do all the Mormon things. You have to believe, do, say, blah, 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 all the Mormon things. Also, I knew it was a topic beforehand, and so I dived into it as I researched the idea of what are cults And is the Mormon Church a cult? And basically, what I learned is that I think when most people think of cults, they think of the occult, which is where someone does like sacrifices and stuff, like they're sacrificing lambs and humans and sheep and goats and stuff like that. And there's blood and rituals and weird signs on the floors and crazy summonings and stuff like that. Is I think what people usually think of when they think of the occults is skulls and daggers and blood. But that's not what that's the occult, but not a cult. A cult is a church that basically controls everything in your life. And the more I dove into it, I realized that that's how the church is. They control how you dress. They control what you think. They control what you say. They control what you look like. As I kind of mentioned, they control your money. In the church, they highly believe in tithing. No matter how poor you are, 10% of your money has to go to the church, which is kind of bullcrap. I know it gets things done within the church, but it's kind of crap that no matter how poor you are, even if it means death, it's better to give your money over to the church than it is to not. Because not doing that is disobeying God under their eyesight and what they view. And I thought that's kind of crap. I saw that there are people out there struggling. There are people out there that can barely afford their roof, barely afford their food, barely afford to do anything. And to ask them, hey, give us 10% of your money, or else. Not that the or else is very deep, but the or else entitles. If you don't, you're not following God, which means you're not worthy of blessings, which means you're not going to heaven, or the heavenest heaven. Which I think is like bullcrap. Why would God be so petty to be like, believe in me or die? Basically. That's not how God should work. The other problem I have, and I have this problem with a lot of just Christian sects, is this idea, especially within the Mormon church, that America is God's most beloved land. There's nothing more godly on earth than America. America meaning the USA. And after the USA, it's just the Americas in general. And I think this is kind of crap. Because there are plenty of people around the world that believe in God. There's plenty of people around the world that believe in Jesus. And what makes America so good? Like, what makes the USA so good? If you actually compare the USA to other countries, there's a lot of ways that the US really fails. We're not the freest country or the bestest country. I know there's people that are going to hate me for saying that, but it's just the truth. And those of you that hate me, I'm sorry, it's just because you're ignorant. You've grown your whole life thinking America's the best. And so you don't bother to look into, well, is it really the best? What are other countries like? You don't dive that deep into thought to think, hey, what this system is a sham. And I know that could be controversial. I know that a government person watching this that's high up could get offended that I'm calling them out. But I think there's a lot of ways in America we could do better. Now, this video isn't about America. This video isn't about USA. But I think there's some problems there, which is why I also think that the Mormon Church is wrong. USA is not the best country. USA is not God's country. God created the world, not just the USA. He created everything. Created our planet, he created the moon, he created the stars, he created the sun, he created our solar system, he created our universe. Everything in the universe, he created it all, supposedly, under Mormon theology. So why would you think that the USA is the best, when it's clearly not? There are far better human beings and far better systems elsewhere. If the USA is so best, why are so many Americans struggling? Why are so many people dying because they our health care system is ridiculously expensive. Everything costs a fortune. Everything's become a business. Like even like giving birth to a baby costs like things. Elsewhere, it's usually free, and if it's not free, it's very affordable and cheap. Why should I have to pay like $10,000+ to have a baby? Why should I have to pay $200 just to see am I healthy or not? Why should I have to pay thousands of dollars just to keep in health? Why going to work? Why are there so many jobs out there that just don't care? They don't want to give you free time for yourself. They don't want to give you time to heal from sickness. They don't want to give you any sort of really great stuff. It doesn't benefit the company. And so they're not going to do it for you. Or at least in the short term, it doesn't benefit them because they're all thinking about the moolah. Everything in the U.S. is about the moolah. If America's the best, if the USA is the best, and if this is God's country, why is it so corrupt? This isn't supposed to be a political thing, but as my belief, God created under Mormon theology, under Christian theology, not that I swing that way anymore. If God created everything, meaning the Christian or the Mormon God, if He created everything, why are there those problems? And why, like, if you view America, the USA, as the best thing ever, why? Doesn't make sense.